Okay. So as we begin and recognizing that we are participating from different locations, I would like to acknowledge the land on which I'm coming to you from. I am presenting from Halton region, which is rich in the history and modern traditions of Indigenous peoples. Halton is on the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe people. It is situated on Treaty 14 and 22 territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and I would like to thank them for being stewards of the land. If any of you are joining us for the first time, the county has hosted 2 previous workshops with the intention of supporting you as boards and staff.
Sorry, Jen, you're not sharing your presentation.
Oh, was it sharing before?
No, we haven't seen it at all yet.
Oh, my apologies, everybody. Oh, goodness. Let me just figure that out. Is it sharing now? Okay, yep. Perfect. All right. So again, welcome. And let me just get situated again. So this is where I left off when I was not sharing my screen. So there's been 2 previous workshops. The first workshop covered changes to the Housing Services Act and what that means for you as you plan for end of mortgage. And the second workshop covered key considerations in planning that the board and staff would like to be thinking about and working through in preparation for engaging with the county. Both of the sessions were very interactive with lots of Q&A. So if you didn't attend the first 2 sessions, I would encourage you to check out the recordings and just refresh yourself with those materials. So because the 2 recordings are available, I'm not going to spend very much time today recapping the first 2 sessions. I'm just going to briefly touch on the themes that we've discussed, and then we'll focus most of our time today on where we want to go as an organization. We're going to talk about the essential role that boards play and how to build your readiness for end of mortgage. And we'll also explore the tools and the resources that are available to you as you go down this new path. It's going to be a packed 2 hours, so there will be no breaks, but please feel free to have a comfort break as you need to. So as I mentioned, there's 3 main goals for today, focusing on organizational readiness and capacity building. We're going to provide some innovative ideas on how boards can use best practices to engage with the county. And we're going to look at the many tools and resources that are available to you as you move through the process of end of mortgage. And just like the previous 2 sessions, we really want to hear from you. So we want to make this as interactive as possible. So for our first chat opportunity, I was hoping you could type in the chat, and Judy will be monitoring the chats throughout. But I was hoping if you could share what has been a big takeaway for you in either session 1 or session 2. And Judy will be monitoring as the responses come in and help to read those responses out loud. So wondering if you had any surprises, any sort of light bulb moments with respect to end of mortgage?
Jen, while we're waiting for responses, we do have someone who's just called in. And I'm wondering if it's possible for that person to let us know who they are. I can change your name, and then we'll have to make sure that we give that person an opportunity because they won't be able to use the chat.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Judy. So any big surprises?
Sorry, what's your name?
Tegan. I'm having a hard time logging in on the computer.
No problem. Welcome, Tegan. We'll make sure that we give you an opportunity to chime in. Okay,
that's
sorry,
okay.
Jen.
I'm just here to listen. I'm a County of Wellington employee.
Okay. Jen, just in the chat, a couple of things that folks have identified is that there's preparation is needed to support end of mortgage. That was a bit of a surprise that they needed to do some pre-work and some pre-thinking. They found the sessions to be informative, but maybe a bit daunted that there's a steep learning curve ahead. Also heard that they'd like to hear some more creative ideas about range of options. I'm looking at what some other organizations have done going through this process, which is timely because that's one thing I know, Jen, you're going to be talking about today. The need for planning is very important, and looking forward to the toolkit. So that's great that you're going to be spending some time on that today.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everybody, for your responses. That's great. All right. So moving on to our next slide. So first of all, let's take stock of what we have reviewed together and what we know. We know right now that the government regulations are changing, and with the regulation changes, along with end of mortgage approaching for housing providers, there is a need for new service agreements to be negotiated between the county and housing providers. Through these new agreements, the province is offering greater flexibility for community housing providers. They would like to offer more flexibility with respect to determining how housing providers operate, and service managers like Wellington County are encouraging boards to think more strategically about the future that they want to see in their organization, what terms and supports they might want to see in a new agreement. We also know that engaging in these conversations and negotiations of new agreements is a process. And we just talked about how it does require a lot of planning. It does need to be led by the board together in partnership with staff. Boards are going to be the ones that are setting the future direction of the organization and managing the changes that come along. It will be the work of boards to do the problem solving or issue management as they come. It will be the boards who engage directly with the county in those conversations and the ongoing conversations of having the county looped in about how you are making out through the EOM process. And it will also be the boards who develop a plan for the organization, one that lays out your future direction. And finally, we do know that throughout this process, the county is very much your partner in the planning. They have a great interest in supporting your end of mortgage planning and seeing you succeed. They are here to encourage you to think strategically about your future and engage with you on understanding your current situation from all different perspectives: financial situation, asset management, governance, etc. They are here as your partners to have productive conversations with you about what you would like to see in a new service agreement. Part of those conversations are what is working well for you now, what would work better for you in a new agreement. The county, as we mentioned, is encouraging boards to be proactive in these planning discussions and really thinking about what are your operational and financial needs and what your future could look like. As has been mentioned in the last session, the county has been through this process before. So they have navigated end of operating agreements with formal federal housing providers and done so successfully. So they're very much here as your partner. So you've heard Judy and Lisa repeating this throughout the first two sessions, and I'm going to continue emphasizing it today. We're sort of continuously talking about it, but it really is very much a period of planning right now, both for housing providers and for the county. In preparing for, you want to start preparing for end of mortgage at least 2 years before the actual date. There's so much data to sift through and to consult as you prepare for end of mortgage and to enter into these conversations. And a lot of issues to consider as you determine what you want your organization's future to look like. It is work, but hopefully you will find it stimulating work where you can renew your organization's mission and articulate the goals that you have for the future. In our last session together, Lisa took us through the end of mortgage roadmap to planning. We went through things like the need to gather your information, things such as your end of mortgage date, articles of incorporation, any current agreements that you have in place. We also went through the need to understand your organization's current situation and doing this through doing a project viability review, which will be a key tool in your decision-making process and will help present a clear picture of what your operating and capital situation look like now and after mortgage. So today we're going to spend time discussing what is it that you need in terms of tools and supports to build on organizational capacity. As you begin, it's important to take stock of where you are now. So can you as a board or staff answer these questions and summarize what your organization's current situation is? So basic sort of questions as what is your EOM date? What previous funding programs have you participated in? Things like SHARP, SHRP, SHIP, SHEEP, COACHY, all these acronyms. All of these agreements have terms that need to be considered as you sort of plan for getting into new agreements. And how are your capital reserves? Do you have a healthy balance? Do you have enough to cover future capital projects that you might be projecting for in the future? And then what are your goals for the future of the organization? Do you want to continue providing housing? Do you want to grow as an organization and add more units? Or maybe your goal is just to continue providing good quality housing while maintaining safe and affordable buildings for your residents. And that is a great goal as well too. So in this changing landscape, as we've been saying, this is a time where the sector is moving away from a prescriptive, more compliance-based relationship towards a more flexible and open relationship between housing providers and service managers. This presents an opportunity for change and to reimagine what your relationship with the county could look like. The new landscape that we're entering into encourages and supports more innovation and more choice for community housing providers and boards. By moving away from the Housing Services Act and towards a framework of new service agreements, boards will have the ability to develop new or improved relationships with the county, ones that, as we said, are less prescriptive, all while remaining eligible to continue accessing new funding programs that could be announced in the future by either the federal or provincial government and taking advantage of those supports, and continuing to access the supports provided by the county, including accessing the dedicated team of housing advisors, accessing the ongoing training opportunities that are provided by the county, and accessing that technical expertise with respect to capital and asset management. So now our part 2 is a lot longer than part 1, and it's talking about where we want to go and how we're going to set the future direction of the organization. We're going to talk about how vital you are as board members in planning for end of mortgage and these new agreements. We're also going to spend time talking about how to best position your organization to get ready for the new landscape. We're going to review the innovative tools and resources that are available. These include tools that the county has developed, as well as sector tools and information and resources that are available. I will also walk you through a work plan that has been developed by HSC and the county and talk about how to use and understand it and make it an interactive living document as you work through EOM. So first, in this new environment, and as we've talked about, boards are needing to think strategically about where they want to see the future of the organization. Undertaking a visioning exercise with your board can help set objectives and goals for the future and help articulate the tools and resources that you'll need to reach those goals. So we won't go through a whole visioning exercise today, but to get us a little warmed up, I was hoping we could use the chat and you could offer some thoughts about some probing questions that I'm going to be asking. So I'll slowly ask the questions and hopefully not go too fast so that you're able to type out your responses. And just feel free to type what comes to mind. What I want to do is time travel with you 5 years from now. And I want you to envision the organization that you would like to see. So feel free to answer the questions as you come. You don't have to answer all of them. But what would your financial situation be? In 5 years from now, what would your reserves look like? What condition are your buildings in? Do you have any 5 years from now? Are you looking back and have you done any large projects that you've wanted to undertake? I'll do a brief pause to see if any chats have come in.
Nothing
yet.
Yeah. Everyone's shy today.
Well, this is an opportunity for me to have a drink of water and have you think about what do you see? What would be different with respect to your finances or the way that your buildings look and behave?
Nothing yet, Jen.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. Now stuff is there was a delay, I think. Everything just popped up, I think. Hold on. So here. hope to build up our capital reserves over the next 5 years. And also we'd like to build new 1-bedroom units. So that's exciting, doing some new development. That's Linda. Ellie is saying would like to get more plugged into the grants and opportunities that are available at the various levels. That's great. And we'll be talking some more about that today as well. And then more community collaboration.
Oh, that's really nice to hear. Okay, I'm going to ask a couple more probing questions and then we'll move on. As we time travel 5 years from now, who is living in your building? Is it still the same set of residents? How would you describe your community? Are they a close-knit community? Is everyone sort of doing their own thing? Who are the community partners that you would like to have worked 5 years from now? Who are the community partners you would have liked to have worked together with?
So Jen, we have a couple more comments about your first few points. Art's noting that the reserves are in trouble right now, and you're not alone on that, Art. Improvements are underway. What he's hoping for is improvements are underway with major infrastructure and hopefully will be in good shape within the next few years. So he's hoping for some significant capital to get done over sort of as your future visioning. Patricia's also saying that she would like to see more capital reserves as their buildings need some additional funding.
Okay, great.
I think that's probably, although we're not seeing it in the chat, I would expect that that's probably pretty common. George is saying we're monitoring our operational finances closely and looking for opportunities to maximize revenue, minimize costs, and stay financially healthy by the time of end of mortgage. That has to be music to the county's ears. That's great. Linda, we'd like more member involvement. I'd like to have a membership that is interested in community building. That's a huge element for co-ops. Ellie, community partners would be local neighborhood groups, local support organizations like literacy, budgeting, community health, and also looking for some alternative revenue streams.
Awesome.
And Patricia's saying would like to look to join maybe several co-ops together.
Yay, that's exactly what we're not specifically talking about joining co-ops together, but we're talking about later in this presentation, very much partnerships and unique ways to sort of think outside the box in terms of partnerships.
These are all really great comments.
Absolutely. The last question that I'll ask on this before we move on is if you could think about 5 years from now, who is sitting on your board? Is it the same board of directors? What sort of skills and expertise are they bringing to the table 5 years from now on your board? And I'll mention as people are chatting and answering, I'll just mention that these are just a small set of probing questions, but in the toolkit, there are slides under the strategic planning section, and they run through these questions and many, many more. And this is an exercise that you can do with your board and sort of document where you see your board going in these 5 big subject areas.
And I'm not seeing any other comments.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, this is the chat function. It seems to come in waves. I'd like our board members to have more financial expertise.
Okay.
Board, community-minded, energetic, skilled in financial, legal, energy management, and property management. We work closely with our community and new members to discover and bring new talent to the board. So that's an interesting point about sort of broadening maybe your pool of who would be on your board. We will have some staff turnover of the board in the next couple of years, which is a great opportunity. Empathy for people is the greatest skill set that is needed. Patricia's saying she would like some experience in negotiating, which would be key for the service agreements, financial expertise, and skill in construction knowledge.
Oh, that's great. Thank you all so much.
They're definitely giving it some thought.
Absolutely. I come from the energy management world, so I love all the responses, and that one in particular sticks out for me. So thank you all so much for those answers. I'll move on to our next slide. So during this time of planning for end of mortgage, you as a board and staff will want to examine your mission and your vision for the organization. Why do you exist, and what is your core purpose? Where do you see your future heading, and what are the values and goals for the organization as you approach end of mortgage, and what will you need to achieve these goals? So I'll mention in the strategic planning section of the EOM toolkit as well, there are several activities from the county that can help guide your board's discussions around defining mission, vision, and values. So keep a lookout for those activities in that section of the Living Toolkit. So your organization's core purpose is what makes your mission. Why do you exist? The pillars that become the framework for your strategic planning and defining your mission are housing. You want to provide clean, safe, affordable housing. Finances, we've heard that you want to be in you want your financial situation to be a healthy and sustainable one. Partnerships, you want to work in productive partnerships with community partners, we've heard, as well as partnerships with the county. And residents is the final pillar. You want to have residents that are well supported so that they can live and thrive. And the critical foundation underpinning all of this is your board governance. The governance supports the pillars and the mission. And board members are those in the organization in partnership with the staff who have the skills, willingness, and leadership to engage in the future planning and set a path for end of mortgage. So you as board members, as I've said before, but I'll keep on saying this afternoon, you play such an essential role in community housing. You are the only group with defined legal duties to the organization, and it is only you that can negotiate and sign a new agreement with the county. So any future planning process has to start with the board. As board members, it is your responsibility to set the vision and operations of the organization. This time in the sector is one of a lot of change, and it can feel overwhelming, as we've heard, and we know that serving on the board requires a lot of time and commitment and effort on your part. Engaging in this strategic, big picture thinking requires even more time and deliberate attention. However, if you undertake these activities, it will very much be time well spent. Figuring out your future direction and what you need from the county will be really helpful in framing the discussions and the negotiations with the county. So things to consider and discuss as a board. As EOM approaches, there are opportunities for creating a new kind of partnership with the county, one that's based on shared interests and shared desires to house people well. One of the shared interests may be in simplifying the relationship, both from the county's perspective and from the board and the staff. The county wants to empower you as housing providers to free you up to be more innovative and provide unique supports for the people that you serve. We want to take this opportunity to hear your ideas about the kind of partnership with the county that you think will meet your organization's goals. So in the chat, if you could share, what are agreement elements that you would like to negotiate or have included in a new agreement? Is there anything you would like to change? Is there anything that you don't want to change, that you want to keep the same? This feedback will be really helpful for the county to hear as they navigate how to best support providers in EOM. So I know these are big questions, so I'll give a couple moments for the chats to roll in.
And I've learned that it takes a couple of seconds for them to come rolling in. So I'll keep my eye out, Jen.
I'll have another glass of water.
Here's one. We may want to change the profile of RGI to market rent units so that we could take in some more market rent units. And that's Linda mentioned that, and that's something we've heard from others as well as sort of an opportunity for some additional revenue generation. So that's an interesting point, Linda.
And feel free to type in the chat as well, things that you want it to change, but also if there's something in your current agreement that you actually really like and you don't want to change, that's a great piece of feedback as well.
Well, Art heard you before you spoke. He's saying he wants to maintain the close working relationship that they have already with the county and continue to foster that good relationship. Ability to increase the capital reserves without approval is noted here, as well as still having the option to participate in funding opportunities would be really ideal too. And I know that there's federal, provincial opportunities, but there's also county opportunities through things like the Extraordinary Capital Fund. So definitely those are things that are seen as being valuable.
Okay, great. Anything else, Judy, or should I move on?
Maybe give it one more second. Trevor is saying financial support to allow remortgaging in order to update the aging buildings, such as kitchens, bathroom windows, flooring, driveways, etc. That's definitely something that, you know, we're hearing providers talk about. Is obviously up to this point, remortgaging hasn't been possible, but end of mortgage provides that opportunity to access your equity. So Trevor's really noting that that's something they're interested in looking forward to. Patricia's noting may want to look at amalgamations with other co-ops to give a larger member base, and we may need to negotiate a second mortgage. So also sort of picking up on that. So those are all really innovative and interesting ideas. George is saying work with the county to change the RGI benchmarks to keep it adequate with every rising inflation and to keep gap between the market and the benchmark RGI rents small. That's an interesting point. I mean, Ellie, being a property manager for smaller nonprofits who want to retain their boards, more financial training for nonprofit boards and staff.
That's good to hear.
Patricia's saying, I thought benchmarks would be gone. The benchmark funding formula is definitely will be gone, Patricia, with the end of mortgage. Having said that, you've got some legacy RGI rents there that I'm sure as you're crafting your financial plans with the county is something that you would want to be taking a look at. Updating utility amounts. Yeah, that's also sort of tied to that benchmark funding formula, which won't be in existence once the service agreements are in place, but definitely part of conversations that you may want to be having as you're crafting that financial plan with the county about what your expenses are in that area.
Great. I love how interactive everyone is today. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide.
Oh, sorry, Jen, one last.
Yeah,
not having to use the same insurance company.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, everybody. So I'm going to do a little shift and we're going to dive into exploring the areas of supports you might need and tools and resources to build capacity that you might need. So this is the time to ask of your board of directors, do we have the capacity and resources to address the needs across the areas of asset management, governance, partnerships, end of mortgage, planning, and finances? And what will be required to obtain or strengthen this capacity? As your organization is setting the new path forward over the next 30 years, the supports and resources that you need might change. So this is a really good opportunity to hear from you about the areas that you anticipate needing some support. So we're going to jump into some poll questions. So this poll question will give us insight into areas you feel need to be given specific attention. So what do you feel that you need more support in? Do you need some more support in maintenance and capital repairs? Budget and financial position. I think we've heard that today already. Working with other organizations and forming community partnerships. I think that gets cut off, but it says community partnerships. Tenant relations, services and support. Board governance and succession. Or staff succession planning. And I believe you can vote for more than one. So feel free to vote in everything that you would like to get some more support in.
Jen, there is two more at the bottom there that you might not be able to see. Growth, expansion, and development.
Right.
And then other. So
yes,
you have to scroll down a little bit, folks.
Sorry, that's a good reminder to scroll down. I know that because I have it right in front of me, but even I forgot to scroll down. So if you can't see those ones, please scroll down. And if you do vote for other, if there's something that we haven't captured, please let us know. All of it's really good feedback to take back.
Jen, we have about 9 people responding, but 10. I'm going to end the poll. I'm almost call up the results.
Okay, so it looks like definitely maintenance and capital repairs, which we've already heard from the comments already this afternoon. And of course, the finances are the big ones. But we've heard this afternoon very much a desire for some groups to form partnerships with other organizations and to talk about board succession planning and growth and expansion and development. No one said other, so it looks like we captured the main buckets that people are looking to get some resources in. So our next question is, overall, how would you rate the ability and or capacity of your organization to meet the future needs of residents in your communities? So no scrolling needed this time. The first option is very likely to meet future resident needs, somewhat likely, unsure, not so likely, or not at all.
I think 10 is our number of responses. So I'm going to end this one, Jen, and share the response.
Okay, great. So it looks like most feel somewhat confident to meet the future needs of residents, or very able, which is great to hear. But we have heard already this afternoon that, especially in the first question, that there's more a desire to increase capital reserves and have a lot more flexibility with those finances so that you can meet the future needs, especially with respect to building upgrades. And that might be reflected in the one person that answered not so likely. But if I've missed anything in reflecting back, please feel free, if you feel comfortable, to share with us in the chat. All right, so jumping off of that, what type of information do you think that your board would find useful in understanding how it oversees the corporation? I believe this is a poll. I'll read out the answers. So more support in overseeing the corporation. One option is board and governance procedures and training, insurance and board of directors liability, information on the operational review process, Residential Tenancy Act and leasing rules, information on co-op bylaws, best practices from other housing providers, or other. Other is if you just scroll down, and if you feel comfortable, please share in the chat.
Waiting for a couple more, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
But in the chat, oh, sorry, I can't. In the chat, I've got interplay between financial statements, errors, ASE, reconciliation, surpluses, etc. So all of those. And let me end the poll. So we've got our 10 responses, and I'll show you the results.
Okay, great. So very much board governance procedures and training, which we're going to be talking about this afternoon. Another popular one was best practices from other housing providers, which is great. We're going to be talking about that. And again, thank you so much for all of your feedback. This is really good for us all to hear and the county to hear. And the person that said other, if you want to type in the chat, or
oh, they did. Sorry, that was the one I mentioned, the interplay between all of the different financial reconciliation and documentation that has to be provided. So
okay, perfect. Thank you, Judy. All right, so elements to consider when you are thinking about your organization's capacity are your organization structure, including your board, staffing, any committees or working groups that you have, the expertise and knowledge of the skills that both your board members and your staff members bring to the partnership, your organization's internal culture, commitment, and different values, and your partnerships, both with the county, with your management, and with community partners that you might work with. And finally, you must consider obviously the housing asset itself. So throughout this afternoon, I really want to underscore that this is maybe an overwhelming time, but very much an exciting time of change and possibility. It's really an opportunity to energize and invigorate your board around your organization's future and what you want it to look like. It offers a chance to really focus on strategy and innovation and thinking outside of the prescriptive box of the Housing Services Act. So it's a chance to embark on a unique experience, something that you might not have experienced before. The opportunity to sort of reimagine what a service agreement could look like with the county and how relaxed conditions or terms might support you as an organization to evolve and build on the great work that you're already doing to house those in the community. So our fourth poll question. So in this section, I'd like to get a glimpse of where you are now in your board commitment. So in the poll, could you please let us know how long you have either been serving on the board or a staff person with the organization in your current role? So less than a year, 1 to 5, 5 to 10, or over 10.
These are your
Okay.
results, Jen. That was a fast poll. That one came in fast.
That was easy. All right, so it's sort of all across the board. There's a real spirit of volunteerism here as well, with people serving, 3 people serving over 10 years. It's amazing. Okay, so I will move on. So this next question is sort of thinking about EOM and your board and your staffing. So do you intend on continuing your role in the next 2 years? The choices are yes, no, or unsure.
Jen,
Oh, wow.
you've got all 10 in and you've got all 10 yeses.
That's fantastic to hear, because over the next 2 years, we'll need people that are sort of familiar with what we're talking about with EOM planning. So that's really positive to see. Thank you. Okay, and then this is a chat question. I'm wondering, what skills and expertise do you see of value to the board as you look at strengthening your capacity and taking your organization to that new world of post end of mortgage? So please feel free to type in the chat qualities and expertise that you think are important. We did already hear some earlier this afternoon that empathy is considered one of the most important things to have. I've jotted down some things that I'll just sort of say as we're waiting for the responses to come in. I was thinking, willingness to volunteer time and sincere support of the organization's mission. Perhaps, as we've heard already, experience in housing or property management or building infrastructure. Financial background, we heard negotiation, legal. Would you like anyone with a political background, or someone with experience in strategic planning?
Jen, Ellie's noting negotiations, as you mentioned, really key, especially when we're talking about the service agreements, creativity, and financial acuity. Linda's mentioning skills and expertise for the board would include cohesiveness, internal motivation to commit to the job, and financial and business awareness and skills.
Perfect, thank you. That's great. All right, so I'll just spend a little bit of time talking about attracting and retaining good directors. So it is important to strive for a board that's diverse in its directors and one that has people that bring different lenses to different situations. So EOM presents a time to look strategically about who is sitting on your board and who do you want to be on your board in the future. Having a board succession plan is helpful in figuring out how to attract and retain good members. Going through end of mortgage means that you are an organization that's going through a big transition. So this is an exciting and dynamic time. You're also providing a vital service to the community in providing affordable housing. So as an organization going through this change, there's likely many people in the community that want to be part of this experience and have the opportunity to work with you in navigating these interesting and exciting changes. So, as I mentioned before, this period offers an opportunity to excite the board around end of mortgage and the future of the organization. and sort of take stock of your board right now. So ask yourself, does the board understand its unique and important role? Are there diverse voices on the board that bring a unique perspective to the job? Is there a culture on the board of collaboration, trust, and respect? And is there a board succession plan if one or more directors step away? If the answer is no to a couple of these, that's okay, but these are just things to consider about qualities that you'd want to have for a well-functioning board. So when you are recruiting new board members, consider thinking about alternate ways to seek new directors. So some things that you might want to consider are recruiting through local colleges or university programs, students who are energized and have education about building sciences or about finance perhaps, or business. You could call through volunteers through other means. So there's websites available that specifically target those that are looking to volunteer their time in the community. These include goodwork.ca and Charity Village. And consider if there are local community groups that you could approach to see if they could suggest anyone in the organization that would want, or excuse me, in the community that would want to get some board experience and board time. And some things that some other housing providers have considered when thinking about board succession is perhaps approaching local politicians or council members for their various influence in the community. So as you engage in the strategic planning, now is a perfect time, if needed, to revisit your organization's bylaws to see if they need to be revisited to allow for different community members to serve. Another option to consider is, can the board terms be staggered? I know on this call today we have board members with lots of years of experience, but some boards might want to consider staggering their terms to shift to some terms from 1 to 2 years, others 3 to 4 years. This might help prevent boards from turning over all at once, and it might attract board members who might not be able to commit to longer terms at this time. And in the EOM toolkit, there are several resources around from the county around governance that can help you in board succession planning. And remember, it's always a good idea to have a board orientation package, even if your board is just made up of existing members. It's a good thing.
We have a quick comment that I want to note. Trevor's noting that these last couple of slides apply only to nonprofits because co-op board members are members of the co-op, but he did note that there is a need to have some training for members to become good board members in the future. So maybe to provide some more information about some of this more strategic thinking and about the role of the board to try to generate some interest among the membership to be interested in becoming board members.
That's a really good comment, Trevor. Thank you. So, as I've repeated several times today, EOM presents an exciting time to do things a bit differently. Your organization doesn't have to look like how it's looked like for the past 30 years. And that includes how you work with community partners, both in terms of maybe community nonprofits or social supports, and also in one another as housing providers. So I remember in session 1, we saw a real enthusiasm in the chat section. People were connecting already about how they could partner with one another and help support one another. And we've also heard that in today's session about the possibility of partnering with another co-op to sort of leverage economies of scale. So to me, in the session number 1 and in this session and in session 2, if I think back, it sounded like there was real excitement around sharing contact information to get those conversations going. So I think we have a bit of time. I was wondering if I'll just ask another question, chat question. If anyone has suggestions about how the county could help facilitate those relationships and partnerships. What do you see the county's role in sort of building up the partnerships, maybe with other housing providers or with community partners? And another probing question would be, are there community organizations off the top of your head that you are interested in exploring a relationship with now?
And I'm just waiting.
We'll take another break.
Patricia notes that the county could facilitate meetings between housing providers. Linda's saying, I'd like opportunities to have a roundtable for board members to collaborate. That's a really interesting point.
Board members from other organizations, and oh, that's interesting, and bring different sort of lessons learned. That's a great idea. Anything else, Judy?
Not yet. I think though that role for the county as sort of a facilitator is a really strong point.
Okay. We have another chat opportunity, so you can continue to reflect on this question, and I'll just queue up our next question. So the next question is about moving on to property management partners and staff. We've already heard today that you might have some staff that are leaving in the next couple of years. So I'm wondering what staffing considerations you might need to consider as you approach end of mortgage. What are some desired skills that you want to look for in staff and both in community partners as well?
So Jen, as folks think about that question, Art had a point to make about the last one, about the role that the county could potentially play. And he's asking if the county could potentially play a role around creating a pool of prospective board members.
Oh, that's an interesting thought, Art. Thank you.
I'm not seeing anything on this particular question.
Some of these questions are big questions that, you know, I might not be able to think about a response just off the cuff, so I can appreciate that. But if something, as I'm going through the rest of the slides, if something comes to mind, please feel free to share, and we can always reflect it back as we get towards the end of the session. Okay, I'll give it a couple more seconds.
Art's noting that you need a commitment to continuous learning from staff and the board.
That's a really good observation.
Patricia says some financial expertise and good communication skills are really critical in staffing considerations.
Those communication skills, every sector, every job, every scenario, so important.
Retaining the great staff that we have is really important to me. Linda's noting, yeah, retaining great staff is a challenge, and definitely when you've got a great staff person, you want to try to find every way that you can to keep them.
Yeah, they can make all the difference. Okay,
That's it for now, Jen.
Okay, thanks, Judy. So to review some things that you want to consider from an operational perspective, if you are anticipating staffing changes in the next few years, consider going back and looking at that job description and perhaps giving it a refresh, updating it to really sell your organization. Lots of people want to be part of an organization that's in transition because it offers a chance for people to really be part of positive change and community building. You could also consider ways that you can find operational efficiencies via shared services and or space with other organizations. We've already sort of touched on this today. This could be in areas of procurement, IT, legal and audit services, or in project management of capital projects. And I wanted to sort of take this moment to say, don't be afraid to market yourself. So this is a really exciting time. As I've repeated myself many times today already about that, you're providing a vital service to the community. And as you move through this period of transition and engage in conversations with both the county and maybe potential community partners, or maybe potential new board members, remember what makes your organization interesting and unique. You are building towards a new and innovative way of operating. You may even want to think about spending some time about crafting something like a little elevator pitch, so a little blurb to help communicate who you are as an organization and where you are going. This wouldn't have to be anything fancy. It could be just a short, succinct statement, no more than 20 or 30 seconds if you were to say it out loud. It could be used in your job description as well. And this just tells someone who you are as an organization, where you are going, and why they should be interested on joining you in that journey, why they should help you. This pitch would be great to sell your organization and talk about the work you're doing, why it's important that they support you. And this can help in all sorts of conversations with various partners and the county. But whomever your audience is, when you are having those conversations, let them know your vision for the organization and get them excited about supporting you and where you're going. And again, always remember that you are doing that critical work that the county cannot do without you. They need you, and they have a strong desire to see you thrive. So in these discussions you have with the county or any other potential partners, remember to emphasize and be proud of the vital service that you are offering for the community. But all this being said, it's a very exciting time of transition, yes, but we know that change is hard as well. So it's not easy to engage in all of this strategic planning and to build organizational readiness and capacity. And it's difficult to sometimes reimagine an operating environment post Housing Services Act. It's a big undertaking and it does require a lot of planning and work. And it's important to acknowledge that the path towards end of mortgage and these new agreements will likely not be a straight line. There might be some bumps along the road and lessons learned. The reason why throughout all three sessions we've kept on emphasizing the need for strategic planning is because this strategic planning work can help anchor you in the process as you move towards end of mortgage. The outputs that you articulate through strategic planning as a board will provide you something to continue to go back to. Why are we doing this? Well, this is our mission. These are our values, and these are our goals. And remember that you're not alone in this. You have the county here to support you, and you also have other housing providers that are in the exact same boat as you. So in this next part, before we dive into the specific tools and resources, I thought I would just share some of the lessons learned and best practices that we've seen. We've worked with over 200 housing providers in planning for end of mortgage. So we've learned that conversations around end of mortgage need to be deliberate. There needs to be specific time allocated to these conversations. Sometimes getting an outsider to facilitate the conversation helps just keep the conversation on track and moving forward. We've learned that staff, as we talked about how critical staff have great ideas and insights into the organization, and they should very much be thought of as partners. And involving the county as much as possible to help you navigate issues and questions can only make your planning easier and more informed. So I'm going to go through 3 important takeaways in terms of best practices that we've seen. So number 1, this will be of no surprise, have your data available. So getting your data to have an informed and evidence-based discussion with your service manager about your future. And tools that can provide this data include the updated BCAs that are provided by the county, your 10-year capital plan, and any financial modeling that you do. And then knowing your project viability, this is what Lisa spoke about during session 2. So knowing your viability will demonstrate to the county that you have already been taking proactive steps in figuring out how you can improve your organization's financial performance and that you are exploring different options for doing so. And then 3, seek advice from the county, but also from business or community partners and from the housing sector. So you can do this by attending events, and not just events about end of mortgage, but events about innovative and new ideas out there in the sector. You can work with your auditor as a business partner to really understand your financial viability and options, and asking, of course, your property manager if they have ideas. So other key partners that I haven't touched on already in the last slide are ONFA, CHF Canada, perhaps some legal resources, and as we've said throughout today, other housing providers. So as mentioned during session 2, it's important to just start somewhere, even if it's a little start or a rough start, just start it. So start by carving out some dedicated time during board meetings to discuss your end of mortgage planning. follow a work plan, which we will review in the next slide, and report back on the actions, ideas, opportunities, and decisions that have been made, and track your decisions and monitor your progress. So a key element is this work plan. So this work plan is going to be part of the Living EOM toolkit that the county will provide. HSC and the county have developed this framework that you can use as a starting point for your planning. So this focuses on activities and tasks that you need to complete to ensure that you are on track and in a position to negotiate with the county. The work plan is organized by EOM objectives, and each objective has several activities to complete. You'll see, this might be a bit small for you, but you'll see that there's the objective, the activities right beside it, and then there's an open box for you to articulate the time that you're going to give yourself as an organization to complete this task. Who on your board will be the lead, your staff or board, who will be the lead for this activity. And then beside that, it's the associated resources that are in the toolkit are listed. So you can take this work plan and then consult the resources that are suggested in the work plan to help move you through that activity. And then there is a section in the work plan to articulate your outcomes. So this would be any decisions that were made once the activity was completed. So it's very much intended to be a living work plan and something that you're continuously engaging in as you move through end of mortgage. It is a Word document, so you can you can type right in it. No need to sort of try and manipulate a PDF. And it is, can you see that, Judy, if I pull it over?
I haven't seen it yet. No, I was going to ask you if you're calling it up. Oh, here it is. Yeah,
It's
small though. Yeah, it's pretty small.
Okay, let me enlarge it. So I won't go through every activity or objective, but I'll just give you an idea of what it looks like. So here you have the objectives, and the first objective is understanding the new changes to the Housing Services Act post end of mortgage operations. There's 2 activities to become clear about the new changes, educate and be aware of the sector discussions regarding regulations. And here there's resources listed in the toolkit. So the resources are re-listening to the first session that we have and looking at the slides. And that session is understanding the end of mortgage and the changing regulations. In terms of the education about the sector discussions and the new regulations, in the toolkit, there's a solutions lab that you can consult. There's also some activities that the toolkit cannot help you with, but you'll have to research. For example, that would be when your end of mortgage is or end of agreement is, gathering your documents, in terms of gathering your documents, there's been listed resources like your audited financial statements and your annual information return. Identify your strategic vision. There's session number 3 recording that you can listen to, as well as a whole folder in the Living Toolkit that has, as I've mentioned earlier, various activities and pieces of information about how to engage in strategic planning and activities that you can work through with your board. So this just gives you an idea. The entire work plan is 7 pages, so I won't go through all 7 pages in the interest of time, but I'm wondering if we could just pause here. Does anyone have any questions about the work plan or unclear about how to engage or use it? Take a pause.
Not seeing any questions. I think it's, I mean, it's meant to be a tool, and it's a Word document, so you can add in the fields, but you can also add obviously additional action items. You don't need to be limited just to these, but these are some best practices that we have learned. Patricia's asking where we can access all this information. So Jen is going to provide a bit more information about the overall toolkit, and it will be accessible through the county. So you'll get communication from the county about how to access it. It's a lot of information, and they're just trying to figure out how best to get it. George is asking if it's going to be in the county portal, and I was just going to say, I think that's probably the desire from the county, is to get this all onto the county portal. It's just a matter of them working through those IT abilities, but that's definitely the intent, is to make it accessible to you so that you can pull down all of the information, not just this work book and sort of the slide deck, but also all of the various toolkit items that Jen will talk about as we move through the next couple of slides. So sorry, Jen, to cut you off. There's just lots of questions coming in.
No, that's great. That's perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So also in the outcomes, I mean, you could type in this box, but it's likely some outcomes will be short, so like a couple words or sentences, but some, like renewing your vision and values, might be very long, so that you could, instead of typing all of that in the box and making the box gigantic, you might want to just consider writing down where that information is stored. If you've sort of done a bit of strategic planning work and there's some documents relating to that, you could just note where they are in the organization, in your file structure or whatnot. Okay, I'll pull this down and keep going. So finally, I sound like a broken record right now, but our piece of advice in terms of best practice is to talk to the county often. Just keep those conversations going. Perhaps start inviting them to attend some board meetings here and there, and letting them know what your interests are, if you're interested in exploring new programs, and keeping that dialogue back and forth. Maybe they know of some new programs that might be coming down in the future, and keeping those lines of communication open. So I'm just going to take a pause. We have a polling question. If you feel ready to move forward in the next phase of planning. So the first option is yes, let's get planning. I'm going to add in you're excited. The second option is not yet. And the third is other. And if you have others, please, if you feel comfortable, type in the chat.
Just waiting for a couple more, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll end the poll. Share the results.
Okay, so most people feel excited to get planning. I'm interpreting, so that's great. One person doesn't feel totally ready yet, and that's okay. We're in the next couple slides, we're going to move through even more tools, and we're going to ask you if there's a question that we haven't asked about, something that would help you feel a little bit more comfortable to start that next phase of the planning. So the next question I have for you is a chat question. It just bounces off of that poll. Is there anything else that you need to move forward in just starting the planning phase of end of mortgage? What do you need to continue those conversations? And I sort of thought of some options. Maybe you feel like you need a more time. I often feel like I think we all feel like there's not enough hours in the day or the week. Time is often so valuable. And this stuff does take a lot of time. So time might be something that you feel like you need. Some of you might not have undertaken the financial analysis yet, which is what we heard in the second session. So you might feel that you need to do that before you can really start the first phase. Is there any information that you need that we haven't acknowledged?
Jen, one question Art poses is, what does the county want from us sort of as housing providers? And I think what the county will be looking for from you under this new framework of entering into a new contractual relationship and moving out of the Housing Services Act is to really understand what you want to achieve and what you need in order to achieve that. So I think that's why we keep sort of driving home some of this and some of these same points. And I'm sure you're like, okay, enough about the strategic planning, but it's not meant to be, as Jen mentioned, it doesn't need to be highfalutin, but I think that the county needs to know from you as a board, is your aspiration to continue to provide housing the way you have for the last 20 years for the next 20 years? If that's your aspiration, that's fantastic. It doesn't need to be any more grandiose than that. But the county is looking to know who wishes to partner with them over what kind of term. And then Art, I'm going to pick on you a little bit because I know that you also said your capital reserves aren't sufficient. So the county will be looking for you to provide some of that evidence to say, well, we've looked at the building condition audit, we've looked at our state of our building, and these are our capital reserves. This is where we see the shortfall is. This is what we'd like to accomplish in this kind of timeline. How can the county help us? So the county's really looking for you to come to the table with some questions, concerns, and ideas about where you want to be going, so that you can both have a joint conversation about how best to support you. It is what is different in this new service agreement framework is that it isn't a one size fits all. It's not legislation that everyone must follow. It is very much a conversation about what do you need to be financially viable. So any information that you can come as a housing provider to the county with to start those conversations is really of benefit. Sorry, there's two other comments here. Linda's saying, I would like the ability to connect with other organizations that are going through the process to share ideas and resources, and that would help us mark our progress along the journey. And that's a really interesting point. You know, setting up maybe some opportunities for providers to come together and share where they are in their process. Sounds like that would be valuable. And Linda, I think I missed one of your earlier comments just about the fact that I think it was you who said that you've just been through sort of a process about hiring and have some ideas that could help others, other co-ops. So, you know, just being able to share information around that. Joan is saying, my understanding is that if we do not stay with the county, then we would not be privy to any government funding for our capital projects. Is that true? So if you do not enter into a service agreement, then you would not have access to future programs like COCHI and OFI and those kind of things. That is my understanding as well, Joan. But, you know, if you are looking to enter into an exit agreement, as I think you probably aren't going to remember off the top of your head, but there were a number of elements that were core to entering into an exit agreement, not the least of which I'm continuing to protect the existing residents and existing RGI subsidies, and trying to figure out what is the best path to be able to support those residents. So, you know, if you're looking to sort of leave the system, then you'd obviously want to have conversations about what happens with the capital needs of your building, because through the exit agreement and through the regulations of provinces, very, very concerned about ensuring that existing residents continue to have access to those units. Sorry, Jen, that I think was all the questions that we have come in.
Okay, thank you so much. And again, thank you everyone for being so interactive this afternoon. It makes for really interesting conversations. Okay, so finally, we're going to talk about the toolkit as we get to this next section of the presentation. So we're going to go through the tools and resources and activities that are available to you and included in this living toolkit. So the Living Toolkit is intended to be a living resource library and hub to access documents, templates, and presentations to start you on your EOM planning journey. It contains lots of documents to help you in strategic planning, including activities that you can undertake with your board, doing things like a situational analysis and SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, identifying any issues that you might have as a board or see as a board. And so what we've heard already this session is, you know, obviously finances are a bit of an issue, as well as capital needs. defining your mission, your vision, your values, how to set your strategic direction as an organization, creating an operational work plan. There are also checklists and FAQ documents. These are from CHF and ONFA. There's a self-assessment tool. There's the sample work plan that we just went through. Yes, as I said, strategic planning resources. There's the ONFA Solutions Lab report, and information about sector resources that you can access. There's also, like I said, lots of sector resources and tools. So these resources will help you in the areas of asset management, board skills and support, tenancy management, financial management tools, capital management, legal information and resources, governance and strategic planning, and organizational assessment tools. There is a newly released ONFA report called the Community Housing for the Future, Taking Collective Action Towards Resiliency. This provides guidance on negotiating the service agreements. And for co-ops, there's also CHF Canada, who is supporting its members by offering asset management and financial planning services for Housing Services Act cooperatives. Another thing that you might want to think about exploring, it's fairly new to the housing sector. It is the Community Housing Transformation Center. This is an organization that provides grant funding to support housing providers to undertake kind of transformational changes to improve their sustainability. So these funds are available and can be used for things like exploring mergers, amalgamations, and shared services, which we've heard this afternoon, strategic planning and business planning, and building organizational capacity. There's certain criteria that need to be met in order to qualify for the funding, and these need to be demonstrated on an application. We recommend as a first step that you contact a representative from the center to see if your organization qualifies. When you're having that conversation, indicate the type of project that you are seeking funding for. The representative that you speak to will help you navigate through the kind of funding program that you should be applying to, and would let you know that program's criteria and eligibility requirements. The same center also has made available an online tool to specifically serve smaller and medium-sized nonprofit and cooperative and Indigenous housing organizations. It helps you assess your organizational strengths and challenges in a systematic and simple way. Your board can undertake this process of doing a self-assessment of your organization that covers the 4 areas you see here. So governance, financial management, property management, and social and community relations. The self-assessment tool is your evaluation of your organization, and through this process, you can generate an action plan. There's no involvement by the county in this process. It's just an activity that helps in priority setting for you and your board, and it can be used to examine your organizational capacity and determine areas where you might see a little bit of a weakness and want to focus on. And then other resources and support. The county has resources and support, including potential funding resources, access to funding programs as they are announced. You have the county staff, as we've mentioned, who is a resource to you with their in-house expertise. You have the ongoing rotation of the building condition audits or assessments that the county does. You have available to you the operational reviews that can help provide a guide of best practices. And you have access to ongoing training and education through the county, like this workshop series. And this afternoon, you've given the county lots of feedback on what you would like to see more of. So I wouldn't be surprised if more training becomes available or more sort of resources become available based off of the feedback that you have offered this afternoon.
Jen, I'm wondering if there's value at this point just for me to call up one of the tools, the simplified assessment tool.
Yes, that would be great. We have time to do that.
Folks, we've been talking a lot throughout this process of doing a financial assessment, and we've talked about sort of what resources are available to you. And one of these resources I'll call up right now, and it will be included in the toolkit for you. This is a public tool that has been made available. Can you see this? Can everyone see this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Through these organizations. So primarily CHRA and OMFA. It's a little bit of an older tool, but it does sort of the core of what you need. So you'll see down here at the bottom, there's a couple of tabs. So it's very easy to use. The only caveat is it's not super sophisticated. So by that, I mean, it's not going to show you the impact of the subsidy changes through end of mortgage, because it doesn't actually take into account subsidy. What it does though, is it gives you a good idea of sort of your viability over once you've taken sort of that subsidy out. So what I'll do is I'll just do this very, very quickly. I have some data here I'm just going to type in. So this is just sort of, don't need to even fill out this field, but sort of your identifier, the last fiscal year. So the data that you're using, when your EOA date might be, your total number of units, your total revenue. So this would exclude your subsidy. So this is really just your rental. And if you have any other revenue that you want to be capturing here, your total expenses. Again, you're going to exclude your mortgage here because you're not looking at subsidy. So you'll exclude your mortgage. Your current capital reserve balance, whatever your annual allocation might be. Sorry, I'm messing this up. Whatever your current allocation might be to your capital reserves. And if you have any operating surpluses that you want to be capturing here. And then these are sort of pre-settings. Once you've entered this information into your input, it will automatically generate the results here. So it gives you sort of, it's populated all of these fields. And then what it does is it shows you where you are. My project is here. So this project with those figures that I provided is has a positive net operating income. The capital reserves are sufficient, and it shows you here. You can see if I'm doing sort of something sort of a very gross elements here, but if I change that capital reserve fund balance and how much I actually have to contribute, then my results are going to move. So here I'm still generating that positive NOI, but I've got insufficient cash to achieve it through my capital reserve. So my project automatically moved here. And so as you play with some of these figures, you can move around in different places on this chart.
Judy, we have some questions about the.
Yeah, I'm just going to finish this one. So you see here,
oh, sure.
My project just moved again. So it's, as I said, it's not the most sophisticated tool, but it's a really great opportunity just to have a quick snapshot of where you are. Sorry, and I'll stop talking.
No, keep talking. So Linda asks, what is NOI?
Net operating income. So your total operating income from all of your revenue sources.
Okay, and George is asking, because George says, my understanding is that housing providers will continue receiving some of the existing subsidies after end of mortgage if it chooses to enter into a new agreement with the service manager. Is that correct?
That is correct. And this is one of the failings of this tool is that it doesn't account for subsidy of any form. And so, doing a mock-up of what the impact would be on a subsidy change, unfortunately, this tool cannot provide, but it can give you a sort of a very high level sense of the trajectory or sort of the trend of your housing project. And then obviously it just becomes another tool for our conversation with the county about subsidy. But you are correct, George, that there is subsidy for the RGI residents. That subsidy is a minimum subsidy level required of the county. And then the county has, based on your individual financial plan, the opportunity to consider other subsidies to support your long-term financial sustainability.
Okay, are there any other questions before we finished a little bit early, even though it was still lots of back and forth. I thought it was going to take longer, so you'll get some extra time back this afternoon. But are there any questions before we sort of do a bit of a wrap up and discuss the key takeaways that we've been talking about throughout the 3 sessions together? I'll start sharing my screen. Okay. So the 3 workshops that we've done together, there's been a lot of information. It's been a bit of an information overload, but to leave you with some key takeaways as we close out our time together. And again, these sessions are all recorded and will be part of that living toolkit, as well as the slide decks that we've been presenting. So key takeaways are, 1, of course, is the importance of starting the end of mortgage conversation now, and especially starting that conversation at the board level, of course, involving your staff and other resources, but to get that conversation and that planning going. And starting the strategic planning. And part of the starting the strategic planning is to be very aware of your current situation with respect to your organizational capacity, your how your asset is doing, your financial position, both now and post end of mortgage. Another key takeaway is, of course, track your progress on that work plan and use that as a living document to take you through this EOM journey. And then finally, as we've said before, it's really important to keep on engaging with the county. They're your partners here. They can help be a resource to you and answer any questions that you have about end of mortgage. And they can really provide information that will help you have better informed discussions with the board as you move through this. So that brings us to the end of our time together. So on behalf of Judy and myself and Lisa and the county, thank you so much for attending these sessions, for your great participation. It's been really interactive, really good conversations back and forth. You've provided lots of really interesting ideas to reflect on. And if Judy, there's nothing else, we wish you all the best in planning for EOM and all the success.
I'm not seeing any other chats come in. I'd like to echo what Jen said. It's been a real pleasure meeting all of you and working with you over this workshop series. And I hope that you find the toolkit of help as you move through the next couple of steps. These are truly exciting times and I think very positive ones for the sector.
I'll stop sharing.
All right, with that, I guess I will end this session for everyone. Bye-bye. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone. Have a nice long weekend.
Bye.
Bye.